Hello friends, and welcome back to Farmyard Care. Have you ever stepped onto your back porch with a cup of coffee, looked over your quarter acre, and quietly asked yourself, is this all this space will ever be? For most people, a quarter acre is just a backyard. It is a lawn that keeps growing, a corner for the kids, a fence line to maintain, and maybe a few raised beds for tomatoes in summer. But if you have spent any time thinking about self-reliance, feeding your family better, cutting waste, lowering grocery bills, or turning a small piece of land into something productive, then you already know there is another way to look at it. An experienced grower does not just see grass. We see potential. We see layers. We see a system that can produce food, fertility, and income from land many people overlook. Not with huge acreage, not with fancy barns, and not with expensive machinery, but with the right livestock, in the right order, on ground you may already have behind your house. And this is where so many backyard keepers get discouraged. They buy a few chickens, build a pretty coop, spend heavily on feed, put in the work through heat, cold, mud, and rain. And at the end of the year, they realize they have barely moved forward. That is when a lot of good people start wondering whether backyard farming is truly worth it. Especially if you are the kind of person who wants practical results, not empty homesteading fantasies. This matters. The truth is, small-scale livestock can be profitable, legal, and effective on land even smaller than you think. The problem is not your yard. The problem is the way most people are told to use it. In this video, I am going to walk you through a smarter, stacked system. Which animals make sense first, how they support each other, and why this approach can completely change what a backyard can do for you. So stay with me, because once you see your land through this lens, you will never look at it the same way again. And if you enjoy practical, profitable ideas for real backyards and real budgets, subscribe to Farmyard Care so you do not miss the next part. Part 1, the Great Agricultural Illusion. Let's begin with a hard truth. The real pain of backyard farming is not only the money you spend, it is that sinking feeling of doing everything the way people told you to do it, working every day, and still getting nowhere. You followed the common advice, bought the feed, built the setup, stayed consistent, and yet the system still does not truly pay. Why? Because on a small piece of land, a single animal setup rarely creates real, lasting income. One species gives you one stream of return, and on limited ground that return is usually too slow and too small. The math just does not work well enough. That was not always the way small growers operated. Long before commercial feed stores and industrial agriculture trained people to depend on purchased inputs, homesteaders built systems. They did not choose one animal and hope for the best. They matched each animal to a job. Rabbits added manure and meat. Ducks worked the garden for pest control, and quail fit into the small spaces where larger birds made less sense. Every animal served a purpose, and every purpose either produced income or lowered a cost. Nothing was wasted, and nothing stayed idle. Then modern agriculture changed the model. Large companies profit most when small growers stay dependent on feed, equipment, and outside systems. A family that becomes truly self-reliant in the backyard is not an ideal customer. So the old knowledge of multi-species stacking slowly disappeared from mainstream advice and was replaced by the simple, one-animal backyard model. But in many parts of Southeast Asia, Australia, and Europe, people never stopped using these layered systems. And that is exactly the thinking we are bringing back to your yard. Part 2, the Fast Cash Foundation, quail. If you want to stop bleeding money and start bringing in cash quickly, this is where I would start. Quail. In a backyard system, speed matters, and quail can create early cash flow faster than almost anything else. They begin laying at around 6 weeks old. Compare that with standard chickens, which often take 5 to 6 months before the first egg. That difference is huge when you are trying to recover costs and build momentum. A few weeks versus half a year can decide whether a beginner stays motivated or burns out. Now let's talk about space, because this is where quail really prove their value. You can comfortably keep about 50 quail in a footprint close to the size of a standard dog crate. At peak laying, that flock can produce up to 45 eggs a day. For such a tiny setup, that is remarkable output. And quail eggs are not usually sold like ordinary eggs. At farmers markets and specialty shops, they are often treated as a premium local delicacy, commonly bringing $5 to $8 a dozen, and sometimes even more. When you run the numbers, you begin to see why quail are such a smart first step. If 50 birds give you about 3 dozen eggs a day at $6 a dozen, that works out to about $18 a day, or roughly $540 a month. Feed may cost around $100 a month for the flock, leaving a strong margin from a space smaller than many bathrooms. And when laying slows, quail still offer a second stream through meat sales to local buyers or restaurants. This is why I call quail the foundation. They get the first real cash moving through the system. Part 3. The protein and fertilizer engine. Rabbits. Once the quail begin helping with cash flow, the next animal I would add is rabbits. In backyard farming, they are one of the most underrated income animals you can raise. For protein production per square foot, very few livestock options can match them. Here is the figure that gets people's attention fast. One breeding doe can produce up to 200 pounds of meat in a year, and she can do it in a cage smaller than a coffee table. A simple breeding trio, 1 buck and 2 does, can often be set up for under $300, with monthly feeds still staying in a manageable range. With steady production, those does can give you a reliable number of market-ready fryers month after month. Sold directly to customers, dressed rabbit can bring strong value for such a compact setup. But the part many people overlook is just as important as the meat. Rabbit manure is one of the best byproducts a backyard grower can have. Unlike hot manure, it is considered cold, which means it can go straight into garden beds without burning plants. That saves labor, improves the soil, and creates another product that serious gardeners often value. Add in the fact that rabbits are quiet, low odor, and allowed in many suburban areas, and you start to understand why they fit this system so well. They may not get much attention, but they quietly turn small space into steady value. Part 4. The premium patrollers, ducks. Now that we have cash flow coming in and a reliable source of meat in the system, the next step is to add an animal that does something just as valuable in a backyard setup. It improves the land while it produces. That is where ducks come in. Most beginners naturally think of chickens when they want eggs, and that makes sense because chicken eggs are familiar and easy to sell. But that is also exactly why duck eggs hold more value in many local markets. They are harder to find, they feel more special, and for the right customer, they are worth paying extra for. Bakers love them because they make pastries richer and give better lift. Chefs seek them out for flavor and texture. In many places, duck eggs sell for $8 to $12 a dozen, and in stronger urban markets, they can go even higher. Of course, choosing the right duck matters. A beautiful dual-purpose breed may look impressive, but if you want production, breeds like Khaki Campbell make far more sense. A Rouen might give you around 100 eggs a year, while a strong Khaki Campbell can lay anywhere from 280 to well over 300 eggs annually. That puts them right alongside top egg-laying chickens, and in some cases beyond them. Better still, ducks tend to keep laying through wet, cold weather that often slows an ordinary chicken flock down. But the real value of ducks goes well beyond the eggs. In a productive garden, ducks are some of the best pest patrol you can have. They work through slugs, snails, grubs, and other soft-bodied pests with impressive efficiency. When ducks move near the garden, pest pressure often drops sharply without you spending extra money on sprays or chemicals. And unlike chickens, ducks usually do not scratch and tear through planted beds with the same intensity. They move through, eat what is harming your crops, leave fertility behind, and do the job quietly. So with ducks, you are not just being paid in premium eggs. You are also being paid in cleaner beds, healthier plants, and lower pest costs. Part 5. The ultimate multiplier, bees. Once ducks are doing their job on the ground, the next addition lifts the whole system to another level. This one takes up almost no space at all, but it changes the productivity of everything growing around it. I am talking about honeybees. A single hive can sit in as little as 4 square feet, yet from that tiny footprint, you can produce real value. Raw honey alone can bring in $300 to $600 a year from one hive. And during the active season, the labor can be surprisingly manageable, often around 30 minutes a week if the hive is healthy and well handled. On top of that, beeswax creates another opportunity. Whether it is sold raw or turned into products like candles, salves, or lip balm, wax can become an additional small but meaningful income stream. But if you ask me, the honey and wax are only part of the story. The real power of bees is what they do for everything else. Bees are a multiplier. When pollination improves, your whole quarter acre begins to perform differently. Crop after crop responds with stronger fruit set, better yields, and more consistent production. In many cases, well-pollinated gardens produce 30 to 50% more than gardens without strong pollinator activity. That means the same soil, the same seed, the same water, and the same labor can give you significantly more food simply because bees are working the space. And on a small property, that matters enormously. When you only have a quarter acre, every bed, every corner, and every square foot has to pull its weight. 2 healthy hives do more than give you honey to sell. They help your vegetables, herbs, fruiting crops, and flowering plants reach their full potential. In a stacked backyard system, bees are not just another addition. They are the force that helps the entire property become more alive, more productive, and more profitable at the same time. Part 6. The seasonal payday, heritage pigs. At this point, your backyard is no longer just functioning, it is working. You have smaller streams of income moving through the system on a regular basis. And now we come to the animal that can shift your annual total in a much bigger way, heritage pigs. This is where a decent backyard income can start becoming a strong one. And let me be clear, we are not talking about turning a quarter acre into a commercial hog operation. On limited land, discipline is everything. The mistake would be trying to do too much. You do not need 5 pigs, and on a setup this size, you should not want 5 pigs. 2 pigs per cycle is usually the sweet spot. That is enough to generate meaningful income without overwhelming the land, the fencing, or your feed budget. A well-finished heritage pig can give you around 160 to 190 pounds of hanging weight. And when you are selling direct to customers who value quality pork from breeds like Berkshire or Mangalitsa, that meat can command $7 to $11 per pound in the right market. Even running just 1 cycle, or 1.5 cycles a year, through a small paddock can add a serious boost to the yearly bottom line. That is the kind of seasonal return that makes the whole system feel different. And pigs bring another advantage many people underestimate. They are natural tillers. When you rotate them carefully through a small area, they root, loosen compacted ground, and work organic matter into the soil. Their manure builds fertility, and the paddock they leave behind often grows better than it did before. So yes, pigs can bring in a larger payday, but they can also prepare land for future planting and improvement. In a smart backyard setup, that is exactly what you want. An animal that gives you income while also helping shape better ground for the next stage of the system. Part 7. The hidden engine, Black Soldier Fly Larvae. Now we come to the final piece of the system, and in many ways it is the smartest one of all. It is not flashy, it rarely gets talked about, and yet it may be one of the best financial decisions you can make on a small backyard setup. I am talking about Black Soldier Fly Larvae. These larvae surprise people every single time because they function like the quiet engine behind a profitable farm. They take the things most households throw away without a second thought: kitchen scraps, garden trimmings, spoiled produce, and leftover organic waste. And they turn that waste into something genuinely valuable. First, they produce a rich, high-protein live feed that your quail, ducks, and chickens can use immediately. Second, they leave behind a premium organic fertilizer known as frass, which gardeners and growers value for building healthier soil. That alone is impressive, but the real beauty of this system is what it does for your daily costs. Dried larvae can be sold for $4 to $8 per pound, and frass can bring in $2 to $5 per pound in the right market. But on a quarter acre, the fastest gain often comes from using those larvae yourself as free live feed. When your birds are getting that extra protein from waste you already had, your feed bill can drop by 20 to 40% across the system. And every dollar you do not spend on feed is a dollar that stays in your pocket. That is why this works so well. Waste goes in, useful feed and sellable fertilizer come out, and the whole backyard becomes more efficient. Part 8. The roadmap to reality. Avoiding the traps. Now, before anyone rushes out and starts buying every animal we have talked about, we need to stop and have an honest reality check. Homesteading and backyard production can be deeply rewarding, but they are also demanding, physical, and sometimes frustrating. This is not a polished social media fantasy where everything looks beautiful all the time. It is early mornings, muddy boots, broken gates, sick animals, changing weather, and the responsibility that comes with keeping living things under your care. If you truly want this system to work, then you need to avoid the mistakes that end small farms before they ever have a chance to succeed. The first mistake is trying to start with too many species at once. This is one of the fastest ways to become overwhelmed. Do not bring home ducks, quail, rabbits, and bees all in the same week and expect the system to magically organize itself. It will not. Pick one animal first. Run that setup for 90 days. Learn its routine, understand its costs, find its weak points, and get some cash flow moving. Only after that should you bring in the next layer. The second mistake is underestimating feed costs before you have buyers lined up. Animals do not wait for the market to catch up with your plans. They eat every day, whether you have customers or not. So before you buy your first animal, make sure there is demand. Talk to a few potential buyers. Ask around in local groups. Test the response. Confirm that people actually want what you plan to produce. The third mistake is neglecting predator protection. It only takes one fox, one loose neighborhood dog, or one weak point in your fencing to erase months of work in a single night. Good hardware cloth, secure latches, and solid enclosures are not optional upgrades. They are part of the foundation from the very beginning. And one more piece of advice, especially if you are serious about making this profitable: do not quit your day job yet. A productive backyard system still needs startup money, steady cash, and room to absorb setbacks. Emergencies happen. Property taxes do not disappear. Healthcare still costs money. The smartest approach is to build this as a side business. Let it grow step by step and give it time to become strong. Solve one problem at a time, accept that mistakes will happen, and keep building until each part of the system starts supporting the next. Conclusion. Now take a fresh look at your backyard, your side yard, or whatever land you have available right now. Stop seeing only limitations. Stop seeing just a patch of grass that needs mowing. Start seeing a living system, one that can produce food, fertility, and income if it is designed with intention. When you stack quail, rabbits, ducks, bees, pigs, and a waste recycling larva system together, something important changes. You are no longer just a consumer depending on outside systems for everything. You become a producer. You begin creating eggs, meat, soil fertility, pollination, pest control, and feed value from the land you already have. And that changes the way you look at food prices, supply chains, and your own ability to provide. A quarter acre built around a smart stack system like this can realistically move toward $15,000 to $22,000 a year. The land itself does not grow larger. What changes is the intelligence of the system placed on top of it. That is what real modern self-sufficiency looks like. It is not a fantasy built on 50 acres and endless equipment. It is a disciplined quarter acre, managed carefully, built one smart layer at a time. So let me ask you, Farmyard Care community, when you look out your window right now, which animal from this list would you start with first? And what is the biggest challenge standing in your way today? Share your thoughts in the comments below. I read them, and I always enjoy hearing where you are in your journey. If this video helped you see what is truly possible on a small piece of land, hit the like button, subscribe to Farmyard Care, and share this with someone who needs a better way to think about their backyard. Every week here on Farmyard Care, we break down practical and profitable livestock systems built for real people, real spaces, and real budgets. Until next time, remember this: your land is enough. What you need is the right system. Keep growing, keep learning, and take care of your farmyard.